Okay, well, we've been live for 18 seconds here, and I want to welcome you to the Ripple Effect for August 25th. And I'm excited to bring on one of the most important guests that I believe we'll have on this year in terms of someone who's had the biggest impact on my life, both on my health and my business. And today we're going to focus on the health. And I first wanted to introduce my co host, Terry Wade, who is also worked with Pradnya and has some very interesting insights. So, Pradnya Leitner is really a life and a personal and business success coach, and really a focus on mindset, as we'll get to. And she has a very powerful story to share in terms of how to get you on the path to being healthy, being in greater health. And we'll get to that. I did want to just give Terry a chance to introduce herself and say how she knows Pradnya, and then I'm going to give a bit more introduction before we get to Pradnya. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, David, for letting me be the co-host today. I really appreciate it. It's such an honor to be, representing just the ripple effect today because I love what you have put together. And Pradnya, you have changed my life, and so I am just immensely grateful. So this is such an honor for me. Yeah, so I'm a business and a life coach, founder of Lady Entrepreneur Society. I'm also hydration expert with Kangen Water and Enagic. And I just feel so blessed and so honored to be here today with Pradnya Leitner. And you guys are in for such a treat. I would definitely grab a notepad and take some notes because I'm sure she's going to be dropping all the golden nuggets of wisdom today.
Thanks, Terry.
You guys have been just amazing and so supportive. Thank you very much.
Great. And I coined a new term for Pradnya too, the best in the business here, and I really feel the wisdom that she has is really invaluable. And I've been looking at kind of self-help and different business coaching things for a while, and I've really found what makes her unique is her supportiveness, her ability to connect with her clients, and really her investment in their success. That coupled with the great content that she has with from Bob Proctor and the Proctor Gallagher Institute, which is one of the leading authorities on mindset and coaching. So really that combination is really unparalleled out there in the coaching world. And it's I'm down actually about 30 or 35 pounds since I've started working with her. And I really it starts with mindset. So with that, I wanted to give Pradnya a chance to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her professional background.
Well, and again, I want to say thank you again. You guys are two of the people that I hold in highest regard. Um, the investment that you've made in yourselves and growing yourselves is now paying off. I'm simply a conduit. So, with that said, I know we have 20 minutes, so I'll give you a shorter version of my story. Um, Growing up for me was on three continents, which was just amazing. I studied biomedical engineering, thinking that I would be a pre-med student, but then I chose a different path for a set of reasons. So I spent about 10 years in the corporate world, IBM, and then Salesforce. And here's what I would tell you that there came a point, I think it was a seventh year in my corporate journey, when I concluded that there's a difference between achievement and fulfillment. So, with all due politeness, my resume looked stellar, but there was a gaping hole in my heart. I was not on purpose and I wanted to be on it. So then one thing led to another, and I discovered my calling. And I'm saying it discovered it, I didn't decide it. And when we have more time, I can share the longer version of it. So then I started on this path as a mindset based business and a personal success coach. And I would say this is what really got me on this path. So put yourself in my shoe, even the viewers that are watching it. In biomedical engineering, guys, I studied behavioral psychology, human physiology, neuroscience. In the corporate world with IBM and Salesforce, they had put me through all sorts of trainings. Now, IBM is Fortune 15 company. Salesforce is really numero uno in its field in information technology. So they put me through sales training, leadership training, and all kinds of training. Yet, guys, how come I never really ever truly understand how my results get created to and through me? Okay. And that woke me up. By that, I mean like who I am, what mind is. What's the relationship of my mind to my behavior, to my results? What is self image? How do I live inside out? Because my mind's not my brain, and I didn't learn that in school, right? So when I woke up to it, I really saw light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And I say so because I was an unconscious competent. And by that, I mean, I did get great results. But, most of the people that are successful, I'm not saying all, but most of the people that are successful, they don't precisely know what are the mental buttons and things that they're doing that are leading them to that success. And when that happens, that success is not transferable. The skill sets that they have are not transferable. It's not a rinse and repeat formula. So they can't even repeat it with confidence. So now don't get me wrong, they might stay at that level of success, but they might plateau. They might be hugely successful, but they might plateau not knowing what made them successful. But when they know that, then they're really after materializing their God-given potential. So I hope that makes sense. My desire is to really turn people from being unconscious competence to conscious competence so they can go after whatever it is that they want with full conviction and the knowledge that's required to take them there.
Great, thank you. And before I really started working with you, I felt like I didn't really have this knowledge of how all the pieces fit together in terms of physical, mental, and spiritual health. And I really lack this kind of spiritual component of where that kind of fits in, which I think the connection between these three is so powerful and is essentially a core theme and topic of this show as well, which, is something kind of what you've taught me I want to share with the world as well. And, a lot of things about these connections that very few people know, and I rarely hear explained and diagrammed in an effective way that you do every week. Could you describe what you see as the connection between our physical, mental, and spiritual health and how individuals can start making a difference in these areas?
Absolutely. Now, do you mind if I preface that with a few thoughts? David? Okay. So, audience, I'm going to come to answering that question, but I want to preface it because then you will really latch on fully to what I'm saying. Okay. I want you to think about two entrepreneurs or two sellers, selling or serving to similar sort of clients, helping people in similar sort of markets, having gone through similar sort of enablement, having equal opportunities, so to speak. But why does their performance differ? Really think. Why does their performance differ? Why is it this entrepreneur or seller A is blowing past his own expectations and revenue targets, whereas the entrepreneur B is barely keeping the lights up? Intuitively, people would say that, it's the mindset or confidence of entrepreneur A. The person has better attitude, has more grit, has more self-esteem, thinks differently, expects differently, right? But if you really look at it, now Terry's on a call. Terry, if I were to shake your hand, let's say if we were in person and I would shake your hand, right? I would feel your hand. I would feel your palm, okay? But where is yours and mine thinking, mindset, beliefs, behaviors, habits, expectations, attitudes, grit? Where is all of that? You see what I'm saying? So it's that invisible side of our personality to and through our behavior and action sculpts the visible side of our results. And nobody ever took us to that invisible side. So we're not aware of it, but that is the cause. And the effect is what we experience on the physical plane. You see what I'm saying? So now let's tie it to the question that David was asking. When it comes to health, how can we explain the connection between spiritual, mental, and then physical? Okay. So let me begin with a quote that would really allow me to explain this point. Andrew Carnegie, folks, who was Napoleon Hill's mentor. Napoleon is a guy who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich, and it's all about spirituality and mental science and all of that. But Andrew Carnegie said that any idea that is held in the mind that is either feared or revered will at once begin to clothe itself in the most convenient form available. Now, granted, that's a mouthful, but what he's saying is that the ideas that you hold in your mind, whether habitually or intentionally, are seeds. Ultimately, they ought to manifest to and through your behavior and actions onto the physical plane. Now, let's understand that we as human beings, let's look at Terry and I, okay? We're ladies or women, and we're women of color and all of that, right? So, but we exist on 3 planes. Okay, there's spiritual plane, there is intellectual plane, and then there's physical plane. We are spiritual beings. We live in this physical body that we call home, and we have intellect. So based on how we use that intellect, we're tapping into thoughts and ideas that we can pick up on. And as we internalize those and taking those to our subconscious or pattern conditioned mind, which controls our behavior, because you don't act based on what you think, you act based on how you feel toward it. And your subconscious mind being the emotional mind, you act based on that. And again, it percolates to health arena too, because it's your habits and behaviors that are ultimately leading you to have the outcome that you're having today. Now, this point is worth paying close attention to, and Terry gave you heads up that have a pen and notepad. So think about it, okay? Come with me, if you can picture these 2 sides, okay? So we have an ability to choose the thought that we can choose. We can be on the negative side or we can be on the positive side, okay? So let's say that an individual has diseased state, okay? But at some point they were worrying and doubting about it, whether they knew about it consciously or not. In most of the cases, again, we can't generalize it, but in most of the cases. So our discomfort and bodily challenges most of the time start in suppressed emotions. And suppressed emotions happen because of how we think or don't think. So when you're worrying and doubting, you're on the negative pole of that spectrum of how you can think. And you doubt and worry because of ignorance. And that's not a rude comment. Ignorance simply means not knowing. Okay. Now, the opposite of doubt and worry and the positive polarity is faith. Okay, so it's rather understanding. So you have understanding of something and you acquire that understanding through knowledge. And knowledge of what? You study you understand you, how reality gets created to and through you, and then you're more confident. But now let's come back to the negative side. Let's say you are doubting and worrying, okay? And that is when we're using our conscious mind, the intellectual faculties, mental faculties that have been given to us at no extra cost. We're using them to image all kinds of negative scenarios that could happen but haven't happened, okay? And so then the doubt and worry results into fear at the deeper mind. And that fear, emotional state, has to be expressed in the body, and we feel anxiety. Anxiety is discomfort. It gets suppressed. You don't express anxiety. And that suppression leads to depression, disengagement in life and all of that, and ultimately leads to dis-ease. You hyphenate that word, dis-ease. And that dis-ease ultimately result in our body disintegrating. But now come to this positive polarity where you have understanding of who you are, how profoundly powerful your thoughts are. Well, David, I can't see love. I can't see breath. But because of that, Terry, do you dismiss it? No. I mean, our life runs on breath. So just like that, thought is quiet in nature, but you see the results ultimately after some latency. Okay. So now to close out on this question, when you have understanding, which you have acquired through studying, by gaining knowledge, then you get into the state of faith. And I'm talking about faith being the mental state where emotionally you feel that I know my results haven't shown up yet, but I know they ought to happen. I know I ought to heal. I know I have the ability within me. And then that faith leads to you being not full of anxiety, but well-being in your physical level. That well-being is not suppressed, it's expressed. You're more engaged in really creating things, gaining momentum in life. And that acceleration ultimately leads you to at ease and not disease. Now, again, this is a lot to fathom, but the gist of all of this is that your thought and your feelings and your beliefs have profound implication on your health. And you ought to begin to understand it so you can get into the driver's seat and create the health that you so deserve and desire in life. So hope that makes sense, David.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a quick comment, then I wanted to turn it over to Carrie. And in thinking about kind of where I've come with the program, I realized that you and the Bob Proctor program almost did what kind of Henry Ford did with the Model T, where you have these interchangeable components, but instead of the Model T, the groundbreaking car, it's the human kind of psyche and how to recreate this success formula. And it's really a process that when you describe all the pieces might be overwhelming about why it works. But if you just do it and you trust the process that you set up and that, Bob spent a lifetime discovering and putting into action, it really works in amazing ways. What's that quote about success? Thoreau says this great success comes to us in uncommon hours if you stick with it. Yeah. So I didn't get the exact quote right, but with that, I wanted to turn it over to Terry for a couple questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Pradnya. I just love everything you have to say. And it just takes me back to all the study that we've done. And it's really true, the faith based on understanding that, we live on 3 planes of existence. And so that is just so important to realize, is the understanding and having that faith in the unseen. But love is unseen, and that's like the most beautiful thing there is. So the question that I have is, so I've been going through an extremely challenging situation this past week, and I know a lot of other people are going through challenging situations with COVID and just all the different political and racial injustices that are going on. And so the question that I have is, please describe how you can help people to understand more of their mindset, how they can heal and get rid of fear during these challenging times.
That's a powerful question. And my heart goes for, to really people that are suffering through it. I was just talking to somebody with COVID, we're asked to be quarantined and shelter in place. But then with all these fires, you can't even be in your home. I mean, how challenging could that be? My heart absolutely goes out to people, right? And again, it's easier said than done. So know that not only do I feel what people are going through, but ultimately we have control. And there are 2 things that I'll share. The story that comes to my mind, Terry, is Viktor Frankl, the guy who wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning, right? Viktor Frankl, as we know, Terry, was put through all sorts of emotional, psychological, physical abuse when he was in one of the concentration camps during Nazi Germany era, right? Now, despite of all of this abuse that he went through, and again, he was a Viennese psychiatrist, so he understood mind. So he said to people that were suffering, and his peers in the concentration camp, that despite of all this physical abuse, one thing that's in our control is our ability to choose the thought that we want to choose. Now, that doesn't mean that outside changes overnight, but why to give our power to the circumstance? Because when we give that, then we had lost the battle anyway. Okay, so that's that. Second thing that comes to my mind is what my mentor taught me, is that it is what it is. Look for the good or harvest the good and forgive and forget the rest. It is what it is. Look for the good or harvest the good and forgive and forget the rest. And that goes along the same lines of this American poet let's see if I can think of his name. Reinhold Niebuhr, who wrote this poem that my grandma, actually Grandpa Terry, used to tell me when I was a little child. He would say, God, I think it's called Serenity Poem, but God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, to change the things that I can, and give me the wisdom to understand the difference between the two. So nobody is denying that these things, challenging things, are happening in the outside world, but we don't have to feel defeated because of it, right? You can rise above it. And again, it takes endurance and persistence, but that's what I would say from a mindset perspective, that have hope, have, positive outlook in your heart, because it's ought to shift ultimately. I hope that makes sense and resonates with our audience here.
I just had a technical thing. Just we're getting a little bit of feedback on your microphone, so just careful with the wrestling on the microphone.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for that. That's exactly, we have control of the thoughts we think, and we get to choose, to see the good and focusing on the good. And that kind of, segues. So I think the ripple effects really, holistic view of health, mind, body, and spirit, but specifically, body and health related. I think I'm right on that. I'm just curious on how can you help individuals with like their health related goals that they're having?
A couple of things are jumping at me. Look, guys, everything that we're seeing in the physical world is a replica, regardless of whether we fully understand it or not. Everything is created twice, once on the internal side, and then ultimately we observe it on the physical side. So whether it's people's fulfillment in life, whether it's their relationships, whether it's their health, or whether it's their professional success and wealth, all of it has to begin by them wanting to shift on the inside plane. And if you look at it from a health perspective, when the body is having dis-ease and is demonstrating the discomfort, right? Body ultimately is the instrument of the mind. Body, as my mentor would say, it's a dumb terminal. It expresses the activity, the operations that are going on in your mind. So the root cause is in your mind. The effect is what you're observing on the physical plane. So then why not nip it in the bud? Why not go to the root cause as opposed to just simply focusing on behavior or habits? I mean, take into consideration New Year's resolutions, right, David? I mean, so many people would say, I want to lose weight, I want to have more healthy lifestyle, and they mean well, they intend well, but in about 6 weeks to 8 weeks, people forget about the resolution, and that's why it's called Let It Not Be New Year's Resolution, right? So even when they want to form those habits, it's going to begin with them having to change the ideas that are buried in their emotional, subconscious pattern, program, conditioned mind. Because these ideas are what we call habits. You act upon them without any conscious thought to it. So if somebody is experiencing total discomfort on the physical plane, but they have a habit of sleeping late, having a really stressful mindset, they're continually worrying and doubting, they're not necessarily providing attention to their nutrition or meal planning or exercise schedule, any of that. If you want to really form a habit that's lifelong, that's long lasting, you're going to have to make the change and start seeing yourself as that healthy individual. Your self-image has to shift completely, where you, even though on the physical plane, you're experiencing the discomfort and the disease, internally, you have begun to see yourself as that healthy, vibrant, strong person, which ultimately will lead to you shifting the habits. But a couple other things that come to my mind as in relation to how mindset can really play a big part in helping people improve their health conditions is think about the placebo and the nocebo effect. Really think about it, okay? Where doctors would tell a group of patients that you've gone through knee surgery when indeed they haven't. And then they say, Now, to help you heal, here are a couple of pills that you're going to take. And the pill is nothing but a sugar pill. And the patient or set of patients, they take that pill, and then what happens? They recover. So really start thinking, who recovered the body? The belief, the very belief, right? Well, what is belief? Belief is your evaluation of something, but often when you reevaluate that situation, your belief about that situation changes. So now tied back to what we said, Terry, when people become knowledgeable of who they are, what mind is, how the mind influences their behaviors and ultimately their results, mind's relation to their body, right? Then their belief about whether they can heal or not is going to shift. You follow me? So let's say a physician says that there are only 40% of chances that you will heal or recover, 60% you won't. Now, physicians or doctors are called practitioners because they're practicing. Of course, they're very knowledgeable. They have skill set and deep expertise, but they're looking at the statistic. But statistic is a reflection of where people's conditioning and paradigms were, and thereby the results they got. But then you and I, looking at the statistics, think that that's what's going to be the result for you and I, and then we ultimately land up manifesting it. But instead, if you begin to understand what your mind is, and you're able to cultivate your beliefs that I can heal, my body has the ability to heal, and you're able to guide your thinking and belief and mindset, then absolutely, I mean, you're on your path to healing. So in closing, what I would tell people, David, is that, of course, not only can I help, but a couple of tips that we can leave your audience with is that meditate. You know, if you're not finding yourself in a good health, meditate for a few minutes a day. That is when you're stopping the trail of thought. And with that no thought, at least you're affording yourself to not go to the side of worry and doubt and anxiety and all of that, right? Visualize. Everything begins in mind. So see that end result in your mind of the healthy body, the healthy condition, and how you're interacting with your kids and your family. Visualize it. And I'm not inventing this. Olympic athletes visualize and they get to their goal. You know, multi-billion-dollar CEOs visualize and they get to their goals. Why can't you and I? Right? Use affirmations, because your mind, even if you repeat a lie 1,000 times, it'll believe it. So when you're repeating the affirmations, it's not just blowing air out of your mouth. If you're intentional about it, if you're putting all your focus on healing and affirming and issuing yourself the command, then your subconscious mind, being the amoral entity, it'll accept. Subconscious is like soil. It'll give you the sweet corn or it'll give you the nightshade. It doesn't care what kind of seed you're sowing. So it'll give that back to you, right? So lastly, I would say in terms of tools, guide your inner conversation. Guide your internal dialogue, because that dialogue is habitually coming from your current self-image of what you think of your health, of yourself, of your habitual pattern. But when you're guiding your internal dialogue, you will be able to tell when you're sliding down the negative rabbit hole, and then you can afford to stay on neutrality or even go to the positive side. So I know I have a lot to share, but in the interest of time, I hope that the tools that I shared are helpful.
Yeah, before I wrap up, I wanted to see if Terry had any closing comments or thoughts.
Yeah, you know, I just want to say I would really recommend everyone to watch this again because it goes by so fast, this information, but this is so powerful, this information. And there's just so many testimonials. I know I didn't have a health related profession, goal, but everything you're talking about helps me achieve the relationship goal, the business goals that I wanted. And I, taught my best friend this goal, and she actually lost 5 pounds in about a week or so. And she said she didn't do anything different, but the self-image and the affirmations and seeing herself as that person. And I'm sure, internally, vibrationally, something changed where maybe she didn't take that extra snack of a cookie or maybe she went for a walk around the block, and not even knowingly, but just, seeing that self-image and affirming that she is the healthy person that goes. So, the work you're doing is just so amazing. And I don't know how many, if you know just how many lives you've touched, but definitely mine around me who you don't even know, but I'm just really grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you.
Great. And there's the example of the ripple effect right there. And I think, Terry is definitely a testament to what she was working in the program before I got there, and just seeing her on social media. You really see Pradna's teachings kind of living through her, and her energy and kind of outlook, and a lot of the wisdom that she has is really, I just see a big difference in what these can do for your life. And I would just say that if you are looking, a lot of times we kind of know what the problems are, but unless you have a collaboration with somebody who can help you move the ball forward, you really are just stuck. And that's kind of where I was before I met Pradnya. And I think if you have somebody who has the insights and the willingness to help you, it's amazing what you can accomplish in such a short period of time. And I think looking at people who've been through the program, like myself and Terry, and we're still involved, and other people that Pradnya has helped, that's the proof right there. That's the evidence. So it works. And if you are looking at making a change in your health, I feel like already that I'm have such a more positive outlook, in that I know the burdens that you've helped me remove are just huge for my health, and a lot of it's all mental, and that turns into disease. You say the disease, as you talked about. So with that, folks, I invite you to log into the Quantum Leap podcast. We're actually going to have segment number 2 with Pradnya, which is not broadcast live, but we're going to focus on more of the business aspects and less of the health. So you're welcome to join us there. And with that, I want to say, Terry, thanks a lot for joining as a guest co-host. We look forward to having you back on a live segment to talk about the water and the life coaching that you do in greater detail too. So, and we'll see you soon, Pradnya, in the Quantum Leap broadcast.
And you know what, David? Allow me to just leave this audience with 2 quick points, okay? Their body is always recreating themselves or itself, right? So your belief matters. And if they take away just one quote from William James from Harvard, what he said, believe, and your belief will create the reality. Now, when you switch on the electric switch, you don't precisely or necessarily understand what things or what are the things that are happening, but you get the light. So your belief is really just like that. If you understand it, more power to you. But if you don't, take the interest in learning about it. But up until that point, begin to believe. And it happens via repetition. So as long as they're willing to see what results they want and emotionally and repetitiously willing to get involved in it, it's ought to help them. So thank you again for having me on the show here. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll see everyone next time on the Ripple Effect. Bye for now.
Yep.
Bye.